everyone, it's Charlton. So I saw this article at the Las Vegas Review-Journal, and it says MGM is suing over 1,000 of the victims, I believe. Lawsuit claims MGM has no liability to Las Vegas shooting victims. You know, and I'm going to try to cruise through this, but this definitely touches on some things that I've discussed. I think if you watch my channel, you know what I kind of believe, that at this point I believe Paddock was getting back at the casinos, taking his revenge on the casinos, and you know, we don't know how much money he lost in the recent years, whether he lost a significant chunk of his fortune and he just snapped. I mean, he was probably a homicidal maniac to begin with, but whatever. So, but I noticed in this article, terrorism comes up, you know, and that's, I think this has been discussed a lot. I've contended quite a bit, many times, that terrorism actually helps MGM. If it's labeled as terrorism, I think that limits their legal liability, and it just is, it's just in their better interest. If it's just sort of common sense that terrorism, you know, that wouldn't be their fault, you know. I mean, there may be some neglect issues and whatever, you know, but they wouldn't be the cause of it, okay? You know, it's not as if somebody chose their venue or their facility to strike, they wouldn't be, you know, they wouldn't be behind the person's motive. They weren't the person who caused the terrorism, you know. But if it's somebody else, if it's somebody who, you know, lost their life's fortune or a huge chunk of their life's fortune and just cracked, you know, then I think, you know, you could probably make the case that they are behind the cause. Okay? So, but terrorism definitely comes up in this lawsuit, which is strange to begin with because they're suing the victims. And it seems like there's a lot of legal things going on here, maneuvering, trying to get court venues changed. That's what Englert, the Las Vegas, Nevada attorney who the Las Vegas Review-Journal spoke to in this, and he's representing, I think, a group of the victims in Nevada. There's two cases, or I think there's multiple cases, but in Nevada and California, that's where this suit was filed. Let me just try to cruise through it as best as I can. MGM Resorts International has filed a federal lawsuit against more than 1,000 Las Vegas mass shooting victims in an effort to avoid liability. It argues that it cannot be held liable for October 1 deaths, injuries, or other damages, adding that any claims against MGM properties, quote, must be dismissed according to the complaint filed in Nevada and California. Plaintiffs have no liability of any kind to defendants, the complaint argues, which seems, you know, obviously very bizarre in its face. The company cites a 2002 federal act that, you know, was drawn up in response to September 11th, and it's meant to address, you know, and limit the liability for institutions that are attacked because of terrorism. You know, basically it cites the 2002 federal act that extends liability protection to any company that uses, quote, anti-terrorism technology or services that can help prevent and respond to mass violence. So in this case, the company argues the security vendor MGM hired for Route 91, and Route 91 is owned by MGM. Contemporary Services Corp. was protected from liability because its services have been certified by the Department of Homeland Security for protecting against and responding to acts of mass injury and destruction. And they seem to be pulling this definition in there, you know, because you know, there's two different sort of definitions of terrorism that are touched on in this article. One is the FBI's, the others is, you know, in this 2002 federal act, where, you know, places that are certified by the Department of Homeland Security for protecting and responding to acts of mass injury and destruction. It's a lot of legal semantics, but I'm just saying that, you know, terrorism, it being defined and categorized as terrorism, is in the best interest of MGM. That's my belief. So the lawsuit argues that this protection also extends to MGM. Since MGM hired the security company, they do not seek money from the victims, but do ask the judge to decide if the 2002 act is applicable, and if so, determine that future civil lawsuits against the company are not liable. I'm telling you, this is a big deal about getting it. It's trying to use that act, I think, so that they can use that definition of terrorism, which is very broad, basically just responding to acts of mass injury and destruction. Deborah DeStrong, a spokeswoman for MGM, released a statement about the litigation Monday. According to the statement, the federal court is an appropriate venue for these cases and provides those affected with the opportunity for a timely resolution. Years of drawn-out litigation and hearings are not in the best interest of victims, the community, and those still healing. So it's not in the best interest of the victims for drawn-out litigation, which is pretty funny. So the Las Vegas attorney Robert Anglett, who represented several October 1 victims, said the grounds of litigation are obscure. MGM is a Nevada company, so any lawsuit belongs in state court. He viewed the decision to file the complaint in federal court as a blatant display of judge shopping and, quite frankly, verges on unethical. I've never seen a more outrageous thing where they sue the victims in an effort to find a judge they like. It's just really sad that they would stoop to this level. The act cited in the lawsuits was passed just more than a year after September 11, 2001, the 2002 federal act that they're citing. Attacks and intentionally included broad protections. For instance, the act defines terrorism as an unlawful act inside the United States that causes mass destruction, injury, or other loss. The FBI, on the other hand, has not called the Las Vegas mass shooting an act of terrorism because the government had no clear motive, and the FBI defines terrorism as an act of terror associated with extremist ideologies of a political, religious, social, racial, or environmental nature. Just saying, man, I continue to believe he was just taking out his revenge on the casinos, getting back at the casinos for what he perceived was, I guess maybe ruined his life. We don't know how much money he lost in the last couple of years or so. But it seems to me from reading this, that it getting defined as terrorism would be good for the casino, good for the hotel. And in this case, it seems like they're citing the 2002 federal statute because it has a broader definition of terrorism, basically allowing them to encompass this in that definition, without us ever knowing what his motive is. And there you have it, dude. Thanks for watching my videos. Please subscribe to my channel. Give me a like down below. I'll see you in the next video. Later, man.